Now we're ready for Chapter 7, Lesson 2. Now I'm going to be honest, algebraic expressions are some of my favorite math altogether. Having problems like this or being able to solve for a missing variable, I love that type of math. I find it fun even though it is multi-step mathematics. As long as you get the hang of it, you're going to be great at it. And once again, this is something you're going to be doing for the next several years. This type of math applies now as a 6th grader all the way through however far you want to go in your education. Either through 12th grade, through J. Everett White, through a trade school, through college. Up to you, you're going to be using this. So when we get into the idea of exponents and expressions, once again, an expression is a math problem without an answer. This is an expression. 2.077 times 10 to the 4th power minus 3. So it involves being able to tell what I'm going to do with my exponent, but it also involves understanding that I have orders of operation that I have to follow. We'll review those here in just a moment. So numerical expressions, which is what this lesson focuses in on, is just using numbers. The next video, 7.3, is going to do algebraic expressions where I have letters that I'm going to be using, and we'll be doing that from this point forward. Remembering that we're going to use on our exponents that we have a base or a repeated factor, so the number in a multiplication problem is repeated multiple times, and then an exponent where my power tells me how many times I'm going to multiply it by itself. So those are going to be added in here with the order of operations. So when I look at what we're talking about with order of operations, then this is what the book gives you. I want to review the way that I'm teaching it, because we have all of these different steps now, starting with absolute value. So the saying that we've learned since the first week or two of school, ask for several extra presents from my dear Aunt Sally. And they go in groupings. Ask for several extra presents all go in groups together. From my dear is a group together. Aunt Sally is a group together. So let's review what those mean. Asking for several extra presents from my dear Aunt Sally. Absolute value is the ask. The absolute value, once again, are these vertical lines going straight up and down with something in the center. It's, once again, how many steps from 0 is that number? If it's a positive 5, well, it's 5 steps from 0. If it's a negative 5, it's still 5 steps from 0. So absolute value, once again, is whatever's inside those absolute value lines is just that number as a positive. If it is a positive inside those lines, it stays a positive. If it's a negative, it becomes a positive. That's the only thing that changes. So asking for absolute value for several square roots. Now, we haven't gotten into square roots yet, but some of you are going to start this week and next week on Moby Max with square roots. And square roots means what number times itself inside of this crazy looking division box equals this number. Such as 6, well, 6, if I multiply it by itself, I get 36. So the square root of 36 is 6, because it's 6 times 6. 64, well, the square root of 64 would be 8 times 8, so it's just 8. Or 100. I know that 10 times 10 is 100. So the square root of 100 is 10. Once again, some of you will start seeing that on Moby Max. So that's a quick introduction. Go to the hint on Moby Max to review what it is that it's talking about, or for an introduction to it. Exponents, well, that's what Chapter 7 is all about. Using exponents in all these different math problems where I have a base and I have an exponent or a power that tells me how many times I'm going to multiply that base by itself. Parentheses, focusing in on where that's going to go. This is what has to be done first if it's parentheses, but we're going to look at a key to that here in just a moment as well. And then I jump to my dear. So I have ask, absolute value, for several square roots, extra exponents, presents, parentheses, and then we get into the final actual math steps. I have 4 steps of mathematics, multiplication and division, and it's always going to go from left to right. Even if division is listed first in these steps, I do my division first, because multiplication and division from left to right. Then my last one is addition and subtraction, always from left to right. Even if subtraction is listed first on the left, that's what I do first, because addition and subtraction always goes from left to right. So understanding the order of operations is going to be key and vital to doing these problems on the rest of these videos for Chapter 7, Chapter 8, so on and so forth, when we get into inequalities. So please make sure you have this written on your paper. Put it at the top of the practice page. Put it at the top of your homework so you can look at it every time. You're going to see I have it listed on my board for you as I go through these problems. So the scenario that they start us with, so we understand how to use these. An archer shoots 6 arrows at a target. 2 arrows hit the ring worth 8 points, and 4 arrows hit the ring worth 4 points. Evaluate the expression. Evaluate is just a big fancy term for solve for this expression that doesn't have an answer. To find the archer's total number of points. So first I write the expression that's in the math problem. Sometimes it'll be given with numbers. Sometimes it'll be given in words and I have to read and understand what it's saying, and then I write it down. But then I go step by step through my order of operations on everything I need to do. So my first thing I want to do is I write down my expression. Then I want to make sure that I have my order of operations written down. That way I know that I'm following the correct steps. So my first step has to be to find the exponent. Ask for several extra presents. All of these have to be done first before I do any of the multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. So when I look at this, I have an exponent of 4 squared. I have a base of 4, or a repeated factor, an exponent or a power of 2. So I have to take 4 times 4, which is 16, and then I plug it into the equation. So I'm going to rewrite it. I drop a step down on my row, and I rewrite the problem. Now, some of you are going to fight me on this. You're going to try to do all sorts of math and show it all in one big step, and you're going to get messed up. I've seen very few and far between in the 18 years that I've taught 6th grade. I can probably count on one hand how many of my math students have successfully done these on one row or on one line. I'm telling you now, out of the 2,000 students that I've taught, about 1,500 of them have been 6th graders. The ones that are successful are the ones that take that extra 30 seconds on a math problem and do it line by line by line as they build it. I'm trying to warn you now. I want you to be successful. Take my advice. I've been doing math most of my life. I write my 16 where my exponent should have been. So I look at my order of operations. I did my first set. What am I left with then? Well, I'm left with multiplication and addition. So I know my next step has to be to multiply from left to right. So when I multiply or divide, which are in the division there, then I'm going to have 2 times 8. Well, 2 times 8 is 16. So I drop a step down. I've solved for 2 times 8. It is 16, so now I'm left with 16 plus 16. I go to my last step of my order of operations, which is addition. 16 plus 16 is 32. So we know the archer scores a total of 32 points. Please make sure you're following along. Please make sure you're writing this information down in your book. And if you started daydreaming and you got unfocused, rewind it for the past 2 minutes. Follow along so you understand what we're doing. Let's look at this one then. Notice there are no parentheses in this expression. Once again, expression, a math problem without an equal sign and an answer. To evaluate, to solve for. That's all I'm doing. There are no parentheses there, so I don't need to worry about my parentheses. I don't have any square roots. I don't have any absolute values, but I do have an exponent. So I'm going to solve for my exponent first, according to my order of operations. I have 2 times 2 times 2 because it's 2 cubed, or 2 to the 3rd power. So I have to write it 3 times. 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. Handy dandy calculator. 2 times 2 is 4 times 2 is 8. And that leaves me with my last step of dividing. So I'm going to take my 24 divided by 8. Once again, the first number in the expression has to go inside my division box. It's my dividend. My second one in my expression is my divisor on the outside of the box. 24 divided by 8 then tells me that my answer, my evaluation to this expression, is 3. Now when I look at this one, I've got all sorts of things going on here. It says to write the expression, perform operations in parentheses first, because that's what they showed me they did. Now wait a minute, when I look at that, do I have to do parentheses or could I do exponents first? So the key to the order of operations is this. And I bring this out because 2 years ago on the I-STEP test, we had students that missed a lot of points. Because there was a question that said, what is the first mistake that someone made? I don't know who it was, and I don't really remember what the mistake was. But I remember that these steps here, the order of operation, absolute value, square roots, exponents, and parentheses, that a set of parentheses was done first before exponents was done, even though that's the way I say it. The key to the order of operations is this can be done in any order. If there are exponents inside of the parentheses, I obviously have to start with my exponents inside my parentheses. But notice in this math problem, I have an exponent down here that's not inside of parentheses, and the parentheses are back here. But when I say that my extra comes before my presence, and no matter who teaches it or how they teach it, they always put it in that order, A-S-E-P, or at least the S-E-P. Don't let that confuse you. Those four can be done in any order. Okay, so yes, I'm going to start with parentheses here. It's not wrong. That was the mistake that was made a couple years ago by our 6th graders, and I believe 5th graders had the same type of question on theirs, and most of them missed it as well. They don't have to start with the exponent and then go to the parentheses. I can go to the parentheses and go to the exponent, and here's the key, and this is why. Because it doesn't change my answer. It doesn't affect my answer at all. Okay? Because if I put my parentheses here, or if I solve my exponent first and solve for it, my answer is not going to change at all. And if you don't believe me, you can write out to the side and start with your exponent and then go to your parentheses and do it in reverse. You're going to see you're going to get to the same answer if your math is correct. As long as it doesn't affect your answer, that's the key to the order of operations. Then that first set, it doesn't really matter. So make sure we focus in on that when we're looking at these type of problems. So I go to my parentheses here. I solve for it. 13 minus 4 is indeed 9. So I'm going to rewrite my math problem now. Once again, please don't be lazy. Take the extra 30 seconds it's going to take to write these 3 extra lines to show your work. That way you don't get confused. It's the people who try to cram it all together that they always have to redo their work because they're not taking the time that I'm asking for the effort to be successful in math. Getting a wrong answer by being lazy, it doesn't benefit anyone. Getting right answers by putting forth a little extra effort helps everyone. So if I have 72 divided by 9 plus 5 times 2 to the 3rd power, or 2 cubed, then I know according to order of operations, now I do my exponent. So find the values of the numbers with exponents. That gives me 2 times 2 times 2, and 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. So I'm going to rewrite my math problem. I keep all this other information, numbers in the same order, math forms in the same order. Now I'm going to make sure that I have an 8 there. Then I can go to my next step in my order of operations. I've done exponents, I've done parentheses, now I'm left with actually doing math. I'm going to do all multiplication and division that I can from left to right. So when I start at the beginning, I have 72 divided by 9. Alright, 72 divided by 9 is what? 72 divided by 9 is 8. So I know I'm going to have an 8 plus what? This is where some people get messed up when they have these multi-steps. They add 8 plus 5. Can't do that. Have to follow my order of operations. Have to do all multiplication and division from left to right. So my next step is to multiply then. 5 times 8. 5 times 8 is 40. So I know I'm going to have 8 plus 40. That leaves me with my Aunt Sally. From left to right, any addition and subtraction that's left. 8 plus 40 is 48. Several steps to doing these type of math problems. It's about taking your time and making sure that you're accurate and that you're precise. Think about those sayings that are up above my board. Okay, think about that precision is making sure you're doing the right things and that you're showing step by step so you get all credit that is required. So let's look at example 2 then. Last month online, a bookstore had approximately 10 to the 5th power visitors to its website. On average, each visitor bought 2 books. Approximately how many books did the bookstore sell last month? Okay, so I know I have 10 to the 5th power, right? And if each person bought 2 books, then I would have to multiply or times this number of visitors by what? So hopefully you thought by 2, because it says 2 books. So I would multiply by 2, and then I'm going to go through, once again, my order of operations to solve the math problem. Do I have any absolute value? No. Don't have any square roots. How about exponents? Yes, indeed I do. So my 10 to the 5th power tells me to write my 10 how many times? Hopefully you said 5. Hopefully you started writing it down 5 times. So I have 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10. That's going to give me then, once I have it written down, I type it in, 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10. I think that was 5. Make sure it's 5. But when I hit equals, now I have 100,000. I have 100,000 visitors to my website for this bookstore. Once I've solved for my exponents and I know it's 100,000, then I repeat what is my next step in my math. So I put my answer to the exponent, I carry everything else down, multiplying by 2. 100,000 times 2 then would be my last step in the math problem. I know that we have sold about, or approximately, 200,000 books last month. So what about this problem? On the share of the show, number 1. When I look at how it's set up, I have 9 plus, in parentheses, 5 squared minus 10. Now, I'm going to go to my parentheses, but I'm also going to notice that inside my parentheses, I have exponents. So once again, I focus in on the order of operations, and I know exponents and parentheses have to be done first before I do any of this multiplication, division from left to right, and addition and subtraction from left to right. So I go to my 5 and I focus in on it. I'm going to multiply 5 by itself how many times? It says 2. 5 times 5 is indeed 25. So then I'm going to rewrite my math problem with what I have left. I'm going to keep everything the same other than my 5 squared is going to become 25. 9 plus, I write my parentheses, 25 minus 10. And I end my parentheses. Then what math do I do? Do I jump ahead and do my multiplication and division, addition and subtraction from left to right? I don't, do I? I now have parentheses still in my math problem. So I know I have to do that first. So my parentheses tell me I'm taking 25 minus 10. 25 minus 10 is 15. I'm going to take that answer and plug it in where the parentheses were and rewrite my math problem. I'm still going to keep my 9 plus, because that's the only thing that's left. And then I'm going to change what was in parentheses into my 15. Then I'm left with basic addition, 9 plus 15, which is indeed 24. Step by step, rewrite the math problems. Take that extra 30 seconds, get it right, and show your steps. You're going to see as I work through these and I build it step by step, layer after layer after layer, everything that I change is going to go into one layer, into the next, until I'm done following through my order of operations. So on number 2, I have 6 plus 3 cubed, or 3 to the 3rd power, divided by 9. Order of operations tells me to start where? Hopefully you thought exponents. So I'm going to start with my 3 times 3 times 3, which is 27. And I plug it in this line where there's this gap missing. The gap is from where the exponents were. So I know that that 27 takes place of where the exponent was. Then with my order of operations, I have only addition and division left. And multiplication and division from left to right comes first. So I'm going to divide 27 by 9. I'm going to rewrite my math problem. I'm going to keep the 6 plus whatever that answer is. Well, 27 divided by 9 is 3. So I'm going to plug the 3 in there. So I'm going to have 6 plus 3 equals, for my last math step, and 6 plus 3 basic math is 9. Step by step, layer by layer, I build it until I'm left with only an answer. Please take the time to do it. Hopefully, if you have any questions and I say, well, let me see your book and let me see that you follow along, I see these layers because that is what your teacher is asking you to do. Question 3. In parentheses, 15 minus 3. My parentheses is to the second power or squared, and then I divide by 9. So my order of operations then tell me I'm going to start with inside of my parentheses. Yes, once again, exponent is listed first, but the key to these is that these can be done in any order that they come, as long as it doesn't change my answer. I have to start with inside of parentheses, 15 minus 3, which gives me a total of what? Well, 15 minus 3 is 12, so I know I'm going to take 12 and I'm going to square it. So I plug in 12 squared, because I keep everything else that was in my math problem, divided by 9. Going back to my order of operations, I did my parentheses. Now I still have exponents left, so I'm going to square 12, and that looks like what? Hopefully you thought or wrote down 12 times 12. So 12 times 12 is 144. 144 gets plugged in here, and I've kept my division, and I've kept my 9, everything in order. So 144 divided by 9 then gives me what? My first number goes inside my division box, divided by my second number on the outside, 144. If I'm typing into my calculator, the first number gets typed in first, divided by 9 equals, and I know that it is a final answer of 16. Looking at number 4 then. On number 4, I still have to follow my order of operations. In my order of operations, I know I'm going to have to find my exponent answer first for this problem. So I'm going to rewrite everything, keeping it in the same order, keeping the same signs, just dropping it down with this gap until I solve for my exponent. My exponent is 9 squared, a base of 9 with a power of 2. So I have to do 9 times 9 to find the answer to my exponent. And 9 times 9 is 81. I plug that 81 into the math problem that I'm rewriting. So I have 8 plus 81 in parentheses minus 4 times 10. So then I look at my order of operations. Oh yeah, I have to do my parentheses now. So 8 plus 81 is equal to what? Well, when I type it into my calculator and I see my work, 8 plus 81 equals 90, I plug that in to where the parentheses originally were. Now I'm left with 90 minus 4 times 10. What do I have to do next? So hopefully you didn't think, well, I'm going to do subtraction because it's first. Because my dear tells me multiplication and division from left to right. So I actually have to start with 4 times 10. And 4 times 10 is 40. So I brought my 90 down minus whatever that answer is to my multiplication. In this case is 40. So 90 minus 40 gives me my final answer. 90 minus 40 is indeed 50. Step by step, rewrite the math problem, show your changes, make sure your changes are correct. How can you check to make sure your changes are correct? By using your handy-dandy calculator and plugging it in to solve it. So what I want you to do is I want you to work through 5, 6, and 7 on your own, and then I'll put the answers up here on the board and we'll check your work. Make sure you follow your order of operations. It should be written on your paper by now. Make sure that you show your steps, all of your changes, and make sure that you have an answer and that you're checking with your calculator. So pause the video now, and I'll rework them once you restart it and your work is finished. So I hope that you have done your work as I asked. And as we look at this, going through how this is set up, my order of operations, I don't have any absolute value, I don't have any square root, I have one exponent, I don't have any parentheses. So I should have started with my exponent, which was 6 times 6, which gave me 36, and I rewrote it as 10 plus 36 times 2 divided by 9. That's left with all multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. So I'm done with this first grouping. When I look at the math that I have to do, multiplication and division from left to right, so I would start with 36 times 2. 36 times 2 is 72, so when I rewrite it, I would have 10 plus 72 divided by 9. Still going back to my dear, multiplication and division from left to right, I'm left with 72 divided by 9. So 72 divided by 9 gives me a total of 8. That leaves me with a final step of addition of 10 plus 8, and that's where you should have gotten 18 as your final answer. If you didn't get 18, then you made a mistake. Check your work with mine, because these are the right steps. For number 6, you should have gotten 23 as your answer. If you didn't, let's look at the work and figure out why. So my order of operations asks for several extra presents. Absolute values, nope. Square roots, nope. Exponents, yes. Parentheses, yes. So I got to solve for both of those. So my first thing I did is I did my 2 exponents in one step. This is where I can put some steps together in showing my work because they're done at the same level. So my exponents is 6 times 6 because it's 6 squared, which is 36. And then it's 2 cubed, so it'd be 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. So when I do my math problem and I repeat it with my changes, I have 36 minus, keeping my parentheses because that's going to be important in just a moment, 8 plus 5. Then I go back, I have parentheses, I have to solve for what's inside my parentheses next. 8 plus 5 is 13. So then I bring my 36 minus down, write in my 13, and 36 minus 13 is 23. So if you didn't get 23 as your final answer, figure out which step you messed up on. Finally, on number 7, you should have gotten 99 as your answer. Looking at the steps, I only have one of these in the first grouping of 4, right? I only have one exponent, and that was 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. So when my first layer that I wrote down had a lot to keep. 16 plus 18 divided by 9 plus, well, 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 is 81. Once I have that written down, then I look at my order of operations to figure out what I have to do next. Multiplication and division from left to right. I have addition, division, addition. So I have to do my 18 divided by 9 first. 18 divided by 9 gives me 2. So you'll see that my 2 there in red show you what my next step was. And then I'm going to start adding. I have 16 plus 2 plus 81. Well, 16 plus 2 from left to right is 18 plus 81, which gives me 99. Now the associative and commutative rules of addition tells me that I can actually add these in any order that I want to. It wouldn't change my answer. If you wanted to add 16 and 18 first together to get 97, and then add 2 to get 99, it's still going to be the same answer. Or 83 plus 16 is still going to give me 99. Still going to get the same answer. But if you remember just to do it from left to right, it usually will make it easier and eliminate any possible mistakes that you could make. So on these, they're now going to tell me that I have to find a value that's given. Now if you think back to the last video I talked about, there's some guessing that has to go on. There's really no systematic error or way to do these. You're just going to find out that if I put the parentheses in a certain place, I'm going to get a wrong answer. So what I do when I have these type of problems, I know what my answer has to be, and I put my parentheses around the first 2 numbers. And then I go to the next 2 and the next 2 until I get to the right answer. They tell me I have to be equal to 10. So where I started was I put my parentheses around 10 squared minus 50. So when I do that, and I focus in on doing my parentheses first, well, I had to start with my exponents. 10 times 10 is 100. And then minus 50, which came from the first parentheses. 100 minus 50 is 50, which left me with dividing by 5, and 50 divided by 5 is 10. So I know that is the right place for the parentheses. The directions don't tell me to find the value, because this is the value that they tell me I have to get. I have to write the expression with parentheses inside. So my correct answer is going to be this. It's going to be the expression. A math problem without an answer to it. 10 squared minus 50 in parentheses divided by 5. Now number 9. Once again, there's no set way to solve for these answers. It's trial and error. So when I do it and I plug these in, I started and I put my parentheses around the first two numbers. My first two are 20 plus 2. So what do I solve for? Well, 20 plus 2 in parentheses is 22. I bring everything else down, times 5 plus 4 to the first power. Well, 4 to the first power is my exponent. Well, anything to the first power is just that number itself. So I kept my 22 times 5 plus 4, because it's just going to be 4. Then I have to do my multiplication and division from left to right. So 22 times 5, which gave me 110, plus 4, which is 114. That's not the right answer. Can't be it. All right, let's put the parentheses in the middle then. So in the middle I have 2 times 5. So I write it out. 20 plus, in parentheses, 2 times 5, plus 4 to the first power. And I start there. So 2 times 5 is 10. That left me with 20 plus 10 plus 4 to the first power. Addition, or my exponent, tells me to change my 4 to the first power just to a 4. So then I add from left to right. 20 plus 10 is 30, plus 4 is 34, but it's still not the right answer. All right, gotta try the third one. So I move it to the last two. 20 plus 2 times, now in parentheses, I'm doing 5 plus 4 to the first power. I go to my parentheses. 4 to the first power is 4. 5 plus 4 is 9. So now I have 20 plus 2 times the 9 that was in parentheses. I have to do multiplication first. 2 times 9 is 18. 20 plus 18 is 38. That's in the right place. So once again, there's no really set way to find these other than trial and error, and you have to solve where you're putting them. It's not necessarily a guessing game and getting it wrong. It's a guessing game, solving for it and seeing out if you're right or wrong, and then choosing the right one. So now my answer, once again, is the 38, which is what they said, but the answer line is where the expression goes. And this is where my expression was. So my expression tells me the parentheses are in the last two. 20 plus 2 times, in parentheses, 5 plus 4 to the first power. Okay, so what about the last one? Number 10. On number 10, I want you to try these, figure out where the parentheses should go, and then I'll show you when you unpause the video, and hopefully you have your work and your answer on your book. So hopefully you did as I asked, you paused it, and you seen if you could see, you saw if you could figure it out or not. So you figured out that this would be the right answer. If you put your parentheses around the first two, you ended up with 7 plus 3, which was 10. And they told you that the answer had to be 4. So that didn't work. So when you moved it to the end, and you did your 2 squared and got 4, and 4 plus 3 is 7, and then you had 28 divided by 7, you got 4, which is what they said it should be. So then on your answer line, you should have 28 divided by, in parentheses, 2 squared plus 3. So now, let's talk about real quick what happens if you find out that the parentheses doesn't belong in any of those locations. It doesn't belong around the first two, it doesn't belong around the middle two, it doesn't belong around the last two. Then mathematically you've done something wrong. You've made a mistake somewhere. Because if they tell you that the parentheses is going to fit into an equation, it's few and far between that the book is wrong. Now if it's problems that I've made up, yes, I can make mistakes, but people go through and edit and check and rework all of these books. Every once in a while you might find a book that has a mistake in it, but most of the time they're pretty accurate. So if you found out that it didn't go in any of those locations, then somewhere you made a mistake. Maybe you accidentally, added 4 and 1 and got 5 or something. Whatever the mistake would have been. So you'd have to go back and check your work, because it has to go somewhere. On the last one then is a review of something that I taught you once again from Chapter 6, but in Science Before Christmas Break. Capacity conversions and weight conversions and things like that. The question that you're going to see on your homework would be question 5. This is not question 5, but it is very close to question 5. How many pounds are equivalent or equal to 60 ounces? So we have to remember in science that we looked at the conversion rate that for every 1 pound, I have 16 ounces. And if I'm told that I have 60 ounces and I want to change it into pounds, then I know I'm going to have to do what mathematically? Hopefully you thought to yourself, I'm going to have to divide, because I'm going from a larger but smaller rate, and I want to put it into smaller groupings of bigger rates. So I would take my 60 divided by 16, and when I do the math, then 16 goes into 63 times, which is 48, and I subtract and get 12. Once again, my remainder is my numerator, my divisor is my denominator. So I'm going to take my remainder as my numerator, my divisor is my denominator, and I get 3 and 12/16. But you have to reduce a fraction if I can reduce a fraction. And you could reduce by 2 and then reduce by 2. You could get 6/8 and then reduce it again by 2 and get 3/4, or reduce both of them by 4. Reducing means to divide top and bottom by the exact same number. When I reduce, I get 3 and 3/4, and I keep my label of pounds. Or, if you prefer decimals, and some of you do prefer decimals, then you change it into a decimal, and you keep dividing it until you don't have a remainder. You could have ended up with 3 and 75/100ths of a pound. These are the same answers, because when I look at 3/4, it is the same as 75/100ths. 0.75 is the same as 3/4 when I change it over into a fraction. So this lesson, there's many steps to it. I understand it is a longer video, but the first few lessons are always longer videos because we're really teaching these foundational aspects, and there are some things that I always review from things that we've talked about before or that you should have learned before. We got to nail these things in. We have to understand what an exponent is, that I have a base measurement or the whole number, the factor that is being multiplied or repeated, that I have a power or an exponent, and that tells me how many times to write it down. And then when I have these expressions, that I have to follow the order of operations. I have to do absolute values, square roots, exponents, and parentheses first, followed by all multiplication and division from left to right, followed by all my final steps of addition and subtraction from left to right. And then the key aspect that I talked about with these first 4 is those can be done in any order or in multiple steps, like the one that I worked and I had 2 exponents that were separated. I solved for both of those exponents and wrote them on the next line, as long as it doesn't change my answer. So go back and rewatch the video if you have any questions. Once again, they're online for you and your parents to access, especially if you're sick and you miss school. Please access them and look at them on my webpage at the school website. If you have any questions while you're working it, please come and ask.